Good evening and welcome to This Week with Dr. Sudhir Parikh, where Padma Shri recipient Dr. Sudhir Parikh will be sharing his views on some of the issues making news this week in US, India, and Sri Lanka. Thank you, Dr. Parikh, for talking to us.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Starting from home, the news which has shaken the United States, or rather the Democratic women folk in US, Supreme Court decision that could overturn the constitutional right to abortion, allowing individual states to more heavily regulate or even ban the procedure. Roe v. Wade is the name of the lawsuit that led to the landmark 1973 US Supreme Court decision establishing a constitutional right to abortion in the United States. Does the Constitution recognize a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy by abortion? That's my first question to you.
Well, I think Roe versus Wade, this anti-abortion Supreme Court judgment in a few years ago, which is about 1973. It was very important judgment or decision by Supreme Court, because that gives all the women their fundamental right to choose whether they want to carry the fetus, or they want to choose to do the abortion, or there are circumstances where there is an unwed female can get pregnant, or some health issue. So I think that last 40 years, or 50 years almost, this law was kind of, it was very good, and personally I believe in that. But now we don't know, but we have this leak information that
Right.
Supreme Court is going to decide against it. We don't know till Supreme Court comes out, and we'll see how it comes out and what form it comes out. But I think it's a big battle ahead of us, because most of the women rights association and organization will oppose it. Even Democratic Party will oppose it, and see what happens. Wait and watch.
So, but my question is the harassment, intimidation, threats to the judges, and destruction of property that we've seen since the unprecedented leak of the Supreme Court's draft opinion are unacceptable and no way to advocate for your viewpoint in a democracy.
That is true. I agree with you that no violence or no gundagiri or no anything which is uncivilized should be allowed. It should be condemned, and doesn't matter whether Supreme Court agrees with you or doesn't agree with you. You have to follow Supreme Court order, whether you like it or not like it.
Thank you. So next I would like to talk about India. The Indian rupee dropped as much as 0.7% to 77.4337 to the dollar on Monday. The rising treasury yields in the US are one of the major reasons for this. This is happening as inflation has breached multi-decade levels. The value of the dollar is also rising owing to the rate hike by the Federal Reserve, and it is expected to go up further in the coming days. Why do you think is
Well,
the
there is
reason?
an inflation inflation is already there, and what Fed wants to do is to control the inflation, and in order to control inflation, they have to raise the interest rate, and when they raise the interest rate, obviously dollar gets much stronger, and when dollar gets much stronger, all the currencies which packed with dollar on all the international trades which happens in the dollar, they gets weaker. And that's what's happening with the Indian rupees, and that shows that is not good sign for Indian economy, because of the weaker rupees. Our shows the weakness of our underlying economy, and therefore it's very important that Indian government also try to raise the interest rate, and if they raise the interest rate, probably they can stabilize the rupees.
So China has the maximum forex in the whole world. Its forex reserves are larger than India's GDP. With China's zero COVID policy, the major cities of the country are under strict lockdown. This has led to difficulty for a lot of companies in India dealing directly with their neighbor.
Yes, I agree with you, but and again, that's why most of the nation or most of the people in the world, they do not agree with the Chinese government policy of the zero COVID, because zero COVID is kind of impossible thing to do. What they
Right.
should do is, by when they do the lockdown, they should try to vaccinate as many persons in the China as they can, but they are not doing it, and therefore this COVID cycle going to go on. And that will affect the supply chain, that will affect the world economy, and that will affect everyone. So that's unfortunate part of the whole thing, because COVID, in fact, viral infection does not stop by doing lockdown. The virus infection only stop if you vaccinate the people, and somehow China is not doing it because their vaccine in the beginning was not very effective. And therefore, I don't know what reason they are not doing it, but I think they should vaccinate as much as possible.
So in India, the value of the rupee is depreciating due to this massive selling by foreign investors. For the seventh month, they have been the next sellers in the Indian market. This has also pulled the markets down. Also, the rate hike by the RBI, which may be done again next month, has also made things worse for the markets. People do not want to invest in India.
Well, it's possible, because if you look at the history of the rupees, every 5 to 6 years, rupee get 5 to 7% depreciation. So even if you make whatever profit you make by investing in India, and if you are in the USA, then probably your return is instead of 20%, it's only 15% or 12% or whatever. So I think depreciation of the rupees is not good news for a foreign investor, and that's why you may see that when the currency gets weaker, a lot of foreign investors, they shy away from that country for temporarily.
What would you suggest as domestic policies that the government should apply to make the rupee stronger?
Well, I mean, what RBI is doing it is correct policy, because they are doing it. They are raising the interest rate. By raising the interest rate, they are trying to curb the inflation. So if you control the inflation, then probably the economy will get better underlying. So I mean, it's not that easy. It's a catch-22 situation. But I think what RBI's policy, as far as I know, their stated policy should control the underlying problem of economy. Of course, in short term, there will be a lot of pain.
The last topic that I would like to discuss today is the crisis in Sri Lanka. The South Asian nation of Sri Lanka is experiencing an unprecedented economic collapse that has pushed the government into a deep crisis. The island is struggling to import basic necessities for its 22 million people because of diminishing foreign reserves and crippling debt, spurring weeks of anti-government protests that recently turned violent and led to the Prime Minister's resignation. Much of the public ire has been directed at President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his brother, former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who are blamed by critics for leading the country into this economic crisis. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's a very sad news, in our neighborhood. Because Sri Lanka is kind of our next door neighbor. And I think this situation arises because of current Sri Lankan government has borrowed the money for building the infrastructure without planning, and right and left, the whole borrowing led to this kind of disaster. And now I think in next week they have $35 billion payment is coming due, which is, and their reserve is only $50 million.
50 million.
Versus $35 billion payment due. So that shows that their economy is completely collapsed. And that's why people have inflation of almost like 200%. Everything is very, very unbearable, particularly the day-to-day living, like food and energy and rental and everything. So people are very frustrated. But at the same token, people should do protests, but should do the protests very peacefully, because violence against anyone, whether you agree or not agree, or whether you think that they are responsible for this, should not be happen. Otherwise, there will be anarchy. So I think hopefully. I think India and the Western countries are helping, and even China is helping Sri Lanka to come out of this mess. Let's see, and let's hope for best.
But China is the one, who put them into this debt trap.
Yeah, but that is true. But that is again, it's Sri Lanka is one who wanted the money to develop.
But China is bad news for everyone.
Well, I mean, yes and no, because that's the Chinese way of doing business. So always all this kind of thing doesn't happen unless both two parties agree with each other. And so Sri Lanka has to do more due diligence, and they should stay within their means in order to not to repeat this kind of problem.
For months, Sri Lankans have had to wait in long lines to buy essential items because a foreign exchange crisis caused shortages of imported food, medicines, and fuel. Oil shortfalls have led to sweeping power cuts. The pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine conflict have made things worse, but warnings of a potential economic disaster began long before. Indian diplomacy needs to be more proactive when it comes to Sri Lanka. China could leverage its position in the current economic crisis. Chinese economic support for Sri Lanka was never meant only for trade and economic considerations. It was always a means to gain political and security leverage against India and safeguard its interest in the Indian Ocean rim, through which the bulk of China's energy movement takes place. So India really needs to buckle up and help out Sri Lanka.
Of course, because whatever is happening in Sri Lanka does affect India, because it's all the economy and all social structure is interwoven. So India has to be more vigilant and more careful. Of course, India will help Sri Lanka economically, and hopefully India will help to bring them out of this crisis. So thank you for joining this week. Dear friends, be careful, because though pandemic is over, but recently in last 1 week, there are cases in the New York, New Jersey, and East Coast has gone quite a bit up. Infection rate is almost like a 4 to 5%. So please be careful, particularly when you are with the in crowded place and indoor place. Get vaccinated, get boosted, and be safe. So till then, we'll see you next week. God bless America. God bless India. God bless Indian American community. See you. Goodbye.
Thank you.